The last thing they want to do is enrich anything right now. They want to recover. And we won't let that happen, number one. Militarily, we won't. I think we'll end up having somewhat of a relationship with Iran. I see it. Look, I've had a relationship over the last 4 days. They agreed to the ceasefire.
There's President Trump discussing Iran this morning as he takes center stage at the NATO summit in the Netherlands. The president touting Operation Midnight Hammer as a major success after reports yesterday, beginning at CNN, claimed that it only set back Tehran's nuclear capabilities for a few months. Joining me now is Tennessee Congressman Andy Ogles, member of the House Financial Services and Homeland Security Committees, also the House Freedom Caucus. Congressman, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for being here this morning. What do you make of all this new conversation now that it wasn't as great as the president says it was?
Well, it's absolutely nonsense. You know, the left finds a way to go crazy about it, you know, anything and everything. So they're upset that we're bombing Iran. Then they're upset that we bombed Iran and it didn't set them back far enough. They can't make up their dadgum minds. But that being said, you know, the temperatures across the country are hot. But the only thing hotter is Trump's victories, whether it's bombing Iran into the Stone Ages, the renegotiations of tariffs across the country, or securing the southern border. We're winning, winning, winning. And look, we're going to pass a big, beautiful bill. It may not be perfect, but it's the first step on igniting this economy.
Yeah, I want to get to the big, beautiful bill in a moment. But Caroline, let me turn things to you, because I mean, it's just so typical to hear these reports coming out of CNN that, you know, the operation wasn't as successful as President Trump makes it out to be. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, the same members of the progressive media that are saying that the strikes only delayed the program by a few months were also recently saying that Iran wasn't even developing a nuclear weapon. Actually, that their capacity wasn't even that far progressed, and that Bibi Netanyahu was lying when he said that they were enriching. It's amazing that now they're saying, oh, yes, Iran certainly did have a nuclear capability. And in fact, Trump did not even remotely cut into that. So they have no credibility on this issue. And the other thing I'll say is that what was the alternative? Yeah. You know, Iran, we know, because of the Atomic Agency and the reports and the data that they had, that they certainly were rapidly accelerating toward a nuclear threat. So the only alternative was to keep the same legacy of appeasement and capitulation that the last few Democratic administrations had been doing, and Trump was the only one who confronted it head on, which was unprecedented.
I mean, it's actually comical, Congressman, that this is what they're turning their attention to. Instead of coming up with solutions in terms of, you know, having the leading sponsor of terrorism even have any uranium enriched that could lead to a bomb. You know, we've had people on this show that said that they were a week away from having a bomb. Who knows if they wanted to give it to their proxies? And now the FBI is preparing for possible retaliation from Iran. They're pivoting resources to counterterrorism and cybersecurity efforts. ICE arrested 11 Iranian nationals since Sunday. 11. All of them were in the country illegally. They included suspected terrorists. Even a former member of the Iranian forces were arrested. There have been several Iranian threats to the U.S. in just the last 3 years, including the 2022 targeting of former Trump officials John Bolton and Mike Pompeo. Last year, the DOJ filed charges against a Pakistani national with ties to Iran, accused of plotting to assassinate government officials. And also in 2024, we learned an asset of the Iranian regime was charged for a murder-for-hire plot against President Trump. So, Congressman, your thoughts on what we need to focus on now with regard to the homeland and this Iranian threat?
Well, part of it is to look at Iran's behavior. You know, they are the big funders of Hamas, the Houthis, Hezbollah, and so it is completely, you know, acceptable to have the conversation about the fact that Iran is funding sleeper cells that we know are in the United States of America. We know that there's Iranian hit squads here in the United States, and quite frankly, we haven't found all of them. As you said, we've just recently caught 11 spanning 8 different states. One of them had a military ID. So those folks aren't here to, you know, deliver your groceries. They're here to harm the homeland. And so it's important that, one, during this 4th of July holiday, that everybody has their heads on the swivel and be careful. But that being said, if there's reprisal attacks here on the homeland, you can look and blame that directly on Joe Biden, not President Trump. He did exactly what he needed to do as the commander-in-chief. We had an adversary, Iran, who was developing nuclear capabilities. He struck military sites and, like I said, bombed them into the Stone Ages. And if they start start to enrich again, we need to hit them again, and we should hit them harder. Now, that being said, I do think there's credible threats here in the Homeland. You know, as someone that's on the Homeland Security Committee and chairman of the Counterterrorism Caucus, I have serious concerns, but all of that goes back to we had an open border and Joe Biden allowed our country to be invaded.
What can you tell us in terms of those concerns?
Well, look, I mean, all it takes is one individual, one bad actor to harm a lot of folks. You look at 9/11, a handful of individuals, pulled off a major attack. And so our agencies here in the Homeland, the FBI, et cetera, are doing a fantastic job finding these folks.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of work to be done. And that, like I said, it only takes a handful of folks to do a lot of damage. That being said, this is directly because of the failed policies of Joe Biden, and thanks to the Commander-in-Chief Trump for doing his job to make us much safer.
Which is exactly the sentiment that we heard yesterday when border czar Tom Homan joined me. And here's what he said. Watch. When I spoke with Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, he told me that there are a lot of cells in this country. They're doing drug trafficking. They're doing human trafficking. And they know where some of them are, and they are cracking down on this. But what specifically do you believe these Iranian cells are doing?
I think they're involved in a lot of crime, right? Because they got to finance their activity. So Cash is right. They're in drug trafficking and sex trafficking. They're doing everything they can for funding. The FBI have been arresting quite a few of them. ICE has been arresting them. Texas DPS have arrested quite a few of them. So day one of the Trump administration, we acted upon this. So we didn't wait for the Iranian conflict to happen. We knew from day one, we got a problem with these gotaways. We got a problem with these national security threats in this country.
So, Congressman, that is exactly why you've got more money allocated to the border in the big, beautiful bill. Now, the Senate is working through the bill. They'd like to get it done, but they've only got one legislative week left to get it by the president's desk on July 4th. Ron Johnson told me it's more realistic to think it's going to happen by the end of July, right before you all leave for your August recess. But the president posted on Truth Social to my friends in the Senate, lock yourself in a room if you must. Don't go home. Get the deal done this week. No one goes on vacation until it's done. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent also weighed in on the SALT deduction debate. Here's what he said yesterday to Fox.
What's the biggest holdup with SALT? The fact that there seems to be an inconsistency on the Republican position in the House and then the Senate.
I think that both sides are working through, and we'll have a solution to that next 24, 48 hours. I would just add, had a very successful lunch meeting with the senators. I think that we are on track for hopefully for a vote this Friday for July 4th for the tax bill. President is doing peace deals, tax deals, trade deals, so he's done a peace deal. I think we'd have the tax deal done by July 4th, and then we can finish with the trade deals.
Congressman, when are you expecting to get this bill back in the House? Do you think it's going to be significant revisions from the Senate?
Well, I think the fate of the bill is really in the Senate hands right now. Look, the House framework is a successful pathway to unleashing the American economy. It's imperative that we pass it. And look, if the Senate, backs off of the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, all the green new junk that was put in there, we strip that out. And that's the pathway. That's how we get this done. And look, we have the opportunity to have a big, beautiful barbecue and celebrate the passing of the big, beautiful bill. As we go forward, this passage of the bill is the first step in a multiple-step process of unleashing the American economy and the vision of President Donald Trump.
Yeah. All right, Congressman, we're going to be watching your work there on all of the above. Thanks so much for being here this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Andy Ogles joining us on Capitol Hill. Stay with us. We'll be right back.